My name is Finn and this happened when I was 23, living in my parents' basement in a suburb outside of Cleveland. I want to be upfront about this setup because it matters for the story. The basement was essentially a separate apartment, its own entrance off the side of the house, a bedroom, a bathroom, a small living area. My parents were upstairs, but you could come and go from the basement without going through the main house at all. At the time I thought that was a great setup. I thought it meant privacy and freedom. It took what happened that night to make me understand that those things work in both directions. I had been on dating apps on and off for about 2 years. Not with any particular success. I was the kind of person who would match with someone, have a decent conversation, and then let it fizzle because I couldn't figure out how to turn the online interaction into something real without it feeling forced. Most matches went nowhere. I'd gotten comfortable with that being the outcome. Her name on the app was Annette. 4 photos, 3 of her alone in a backyard, 1 near a pond. She was brunette, decently attractive, and her profile was sparse the way a lot of profiles are sparse. Not enough information to form a real opinion, but enough to swipe right. We matched and started talking. The conversation was fine, not electric, but fine. She asked what I was doing that night and I said nothing, and she asked if she could come over. It was a Thursday. My parents were home but upstairs. I said yes. She arrived exactly on time, which I remember noticing. Right on the dot, as if she'd been waiting outside and set a timer. I let her in through the side entrance and we went downstairs. The first thing I noticed was her eyes. Not in a romantic way, in a way that made me vaguely uncomfortable from the first minute. They were wide open in a way that didn't vary. Most people's eyes move, blink, react to things in the conversation. Hers stayed at the same degree of open the whole time, watching me. When I asked her how long the drive was, she laughed, not in response to what I said, just laughed, and kept her eyes on me while she did it. Like the laugh was automatic and disconnected from whatever was actually happening in her head. I knew within 10 minutes that I wanted her to leave. I turned the TV on, tried to use it as something to look at besides each other, but she never looked at the TV. Just at me. I made small talk. She responded in short fragments that didn't quite connect. The silences were long and she didn't seem to feel them the way normal people do. She just sat in them, watching me, like she was comfortable in a way that I wasn't. I invented a work emergency. Said I'd gotten a text saying I needed to be in early the next morning and I really needed to sleep. She didn't react at first. Just kept looking at me. Then she said okay and stood up. Getting her to the door felt like navigating something without a clear path. She moved slowly, like she was hoping something would change between the couch and the exit. I walked her out the side entrance and watched her go to her car. She got in. I went back inside. I was so relieved to have her out of there that I went upstairs to get food without thinking about locking the basement door. Less than 5 minutes after she left, she texted me. "Are you sure you have to go to bed?" I was having fun. I read it standing in the kitchen upstairs with a bowl of cereal. I put my phone face down on the counter, ate, and went back downstairs. When I picked the phone back up, she had sent 3 more messages. 2 question marks. Then hello with several question marks after it. I blocked her number and her profile. Put my phone on the ledge by my bed to charge and went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. I'm a light sleeper and I wake up often, so that part wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that my phone wasn't on the ledge where I'd put it. I sat up and felt around in the dark. Nothing. I turned on the strip of red LED lights I had on the wall and looked around the room. Not on the ledge, not on the nightstand, not on the floor near the bed. I went upstairs and got the landline. Came back down and dialed my number. I heard it ringing from the laundry room. The laundry room was a separate door off the back of my bedroom. The boiler was in there, a washer, a dryer. I almost never went in there. I hadn't done laundry that night. I pushed the door open and the vibration of my phone ringing on top of the washing machine was immediately visible in the dark. I picked it up. The screen had notifications. A number I didn't recognize had sent 2 messages. I opened them. 2 photos. Photos of me asleep in my bed. Taken from the doorway of my room, from the angle of someone standing just inside the entrance looking toward the bed. The messages above the photos said, "Nice. Good job blocking me." And then, "Lock your door next time." I stood in the laundry room holding my phone, and I had the feeling that I was not alone. Not a vague feeling, a specific one, the kind that narrows your attention to the exact dimensions of the space around you. The boiler was a large cylinder unit in the far corner of the room. Behind it was a section of shadow that the LED light from the bedroom didn't fully reach. I did not look behind the boiler. I went upstairs, woke my parents, and called the police. What happened next went faster than I expected. The girl had been careless about her digital trail, messages, timestamps. The photos themselves contained metadata. The police identified her quickly. Her name wasn't Annette. It was Silvana. She was charged with breaking and entering and stalking and harassment. I got a restraining order within the week. I want to be clear about the timeline. She had been blocked before I went to sleep. She sent the photos after that. Which means she came back after I blocked her, came in through the unlocked door, entered my room while I was sleeping, took the photos, moved my phone to the laundry room, and left. The question I've never fully resolved is whether she left. The police cleared the space behind the boiler. Nothing there. No sign that anyone had been standing in that corner. But I had felt something in that room, and I had not been wrong about the feeling all night. I'd felt at the moment she walked in, that something was off about her in a way I couldn't name. I should have trusted it from the first minute. I moved the landline to my room that week. I installed a lock on the basement entrance the next day. My parents asked why I was suddenly interested in the security of a door I'd used for 3 years without thinking about it. I didn't know how to explain the answer in a way that would make sense to someone who hadn't stood in a dark laundry room holding photos of themselves asleep. The restraining order is still active. I've never heard from her again. But I lock every door now. Every single one, every single night, in whatever order I encounter them. Not because I decide to. My hand just does it. Like a habit that formed before I had a chance to choose whether to have it. Some things don't ask permission before they become permanent. My name is Zoe, and I'm going to tell you something that I still don't have a complete explanation for, and I've been thinking about it for 3 years. I want to be upfront, I'm a skeptical person. I work in finance. My job is pattern recognition and risk assessment, and I approach most things in my life with the same framework. I don't tell this story for drama. I tell it because it happened and because I've never found a version of the rational explanation that covers all the details. I was 27 and newly single when I downloaded a dating app, one of the smaller ones, not Tinder or Bumble, one a friend had recommended because she said the people on it were more serious. I went through the usual setup process, added photos, wrote a minimal bio, started swiping. I matched a girl named Julia within the first day. Blonde, mid-20s in the photos, easy smile. Her profile was sparse, 4 photos, no bio, recently made account. The low-profile activity was the first thing I flagged. A new account with very few interactions and a profile that looked almost too clean. But she messaged me first and the conversation was good, quick, funny, engaged. She felt real in the way the conversation moved. We moved to Snapchat. Her Snap score was under 1,000, which I noticed and filed away. I asked her to verify, sent a selfie first to show I was real, then asked her to send one back. She went quiet for almost a minute and I was certain she was going to block me. Then a snap came through. The same blonde girl from the profile photos. I asked her to hold up a peace sign. Another pause, another snap, half her face, the peace sign, the same girl. I was satisfied. We made plans. She gave me an address across town and said she was home alone. I checked her Snap map, her location matched the address. I drove over. The house had the number 22 on it. I texted to say I was there. She went silent. I rang the bell. No answer. Knocked. Nothing. Called through Snapchat. It just rang. An older woman came out of the house across the street and asked what I was doing. I told her I was meeting someone. She told me nobody lived in that house. I gave her the address Julia had given me. The woman confirmed it matched, said the house had been empty for over a year, the previous tenant had passed away. I got back in my car and tried to message Julia one more time. She had blocked me. Her profile on the app was gone. When I got home, I went through the screenshots I'd taken of the profile before driving over. I take screenshots as a habit when anything feels slightly off, which is the pattern recognition reflex for my job. I sent them to a friend who had grown up in that part of town. She called me back 10 minutes later. She sounded strange on the phone. She asked me where I'd gotten those photos. I told her. She was quiet for a moment and then said the girl in those photos was someone she'd known. Someone named Lisa who had died of an overdose about 2 years earlier. I want to be precise about what I know and what I don't. I know that I had a conversation with an account using photos of a deceased person. I know the account sent me a verified snap, not just photos from a profile, but an in-the-moment snap with a specific gesture I'd requested. I know that snap showed the same girl as the profile photos. And I know that the address I was given was the address of a house where, according to a neighbor, nobody had lived for over a year. What I don't know is who took that snap. I don't know who was operating that account. I don't know why I was sent to that specific address. I don't know what I would have found if the door had opened when I knocked. I've considered every rational explanation. Someone using Lisa's photos who happened to have a friend who looked like her to send the verification snap. Someone who knew the house was empty and wanted to see if I'd show up. Some kind of extended prank with no discernible payoff. None of these explanations are fully satisfying. The verification snap specifically is the detail I keep returning to. I asked for it in real time. The response came after a delay that felt like genuine hesitation. And what came back was unmistakably the same person. I never downloaded that app again. I didn't tell most people the full version of this story because I know how it sounds, and I know that I, of all people, should not be the one telling a story that can't be explained rationally. But 3 years later I still have the screenshots. I still look at them sometimes. The blonde girl with the easy smile, holding up 2 fingers. Whoever she was. Whatever that was. I still don't have an answer. I've stopped expecting one. My name is Brandon, and I want to start by saying that what happened to me wasn't just an embarrassing catfish story. It started that way, but it stopped being that before the night was over. I went to a large high school, big enough that I graduated with people I'd never had a single conversation with. So when I matched on a dating app during my freshman year of college with a girl named Maria who had been in my graduating class, it wasn't impossible that we'd never really talked. I followed her on Instagram. I recognized her face. I sent the first message and we had a genuinely good conversation, laughed about high school, made plans for the same night. She asked if my parents were home. I said no, just my little sister. She asked for my address and said she'd come over. I gave it to her. I waited for over an hour. She never showed, never responded to my follow-up message. I checked her Instagram and she'd posted a story within the last 30 minutes. I commented, "Are you still coming?" She replied within minutes, "What are you talking about?" I sent her the profile. She said immediately it was fake and to report it. I did. But here's where it stopped being just an embarrassing story. I had given my real address to whoever had been running that account. I had told them my parents were away and my little sister and I were home alone. I went back through the conversation and it hit me, they'd asked about my parents specifically. Not in an obvious way, not like a checklist, but it was the 3rd or 4th question. "Are your parents home?" I'd answered without thinking. I checked every lock in the house. Sat on the couch in the living room and tried to convince myself I was overreacting. It was getting late. Nothing had happened. I started to feel the adrenaline wearing off and I was about to go upstairs when I heard my sister scream. I was off the couch before the sound finished. She was at her bedroom doorway when I reached it, her face doing something I'd never seen before, not scared in a normal way, more like her brain was processing something it didn't have a category for. She said there was someone outside her window. I went to her window. The backyard was empty, whatever had been there was gone. But her window faced the back of the house, away from the street, which meant if someone had been there they had gone around the back specifically. Not walking by, not passing through. Specifically at her window. I tried my parents. Couldn't reach either of them. My sister slept in my room. I went back downstairs and sat in the dark living room for an hour, listening. The house was quiet. I started to think maybe she'd imagined it, or seen a reflection, or misread a shadow. I went upstairs. I got into bed. I was almost asleep when I heard it. My sister heard it at the same moment. We both sat up simultaneously in the dark. Footsteps. Inside the house. I locked my bedroom door and got 911 on the phone. Whispered the address, said I believed there was an intruder. My sister started to cry and I put my hand up to tell her to stay quiet. The footsteps came down the hall. Stopped at the door. The handle turned. Then knocking. Hard, deliberate. And then a man's voice, low and certain, said, "I know you're in there. I can smell you." The 911 operator heard it. She told me to get in the closet. My sister and I went in and pulled the door. He kept knocking. My sister broke and shouted that the police were coming. The knocking stopped. There was a laugh, a single flat laugh, and then silence. The police arrived within minutes. They cleared the house. The entry point was my parents' bedroom window off the back awning. He'd climbed up from the yard. My sister screaming about the police was what sent him out the same way he came in. I have thought many times about the question, "Are your parents home?" buried in that conversation. It wasn't the first question or the last. It was placed in the middle of normal conversation, asked the way you'd ask anything. Whoever was running that account asked it knowing they already had my address and knowing what they planned to do with the answer. They were planning the visit before we started talking. The Catfish profile was the first step of something that had an endpoint. My address was the endpoint. I still think about what would have happened if my sister hadn't screamed. If I'd still been on the couch when the window went. If there had been nothing between that moment and the bedroom door. I verify everyone I talk to online now. Every single person, every single time, regardless of how real they seem. My sister's room faces a different direction now. She asked my parents to swap rooms with her after that night and they didn't ask why. She's never said anything more about it. But she hasn't slept with the blinds open since, and I've never seen her leave them open even during the day. Some things close off in people. You can see it happen. You just can't undo it once it does. My name is Sienna and this happened on a Saturday night at a bar in Austin, Texas, when I was 25. I want to give some context about where I was in my life because it's relevant to why I made the choices I made that night. I had been going through a rough few months, a breakup, a job change, the specific low-grade depression that comes from both of those things happening at the same time. I wasn't reckless by nature, but I was at a point where being out, being around people, being somewhere loud and bright felt like a valid substitute for the things that were actually wrong. So when my friend Dara said she was going out and asked if I wanted to come, I said yes without overthinking it. The bar was the kind of place that's just busy enough to be comfortable, not packed, not empty, a long wooden counter and a good sound system and the particular energy of a weekend night somewhere people are choosing to be. Dara and I found spots at the bar and ordered drinks and I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a while, which was just present. Just there. Not in my head. About an hour in, Dara said she was going to find the friends she'd come to meet. She'd mentioned them before, 2 girls from her work. She told me to come but I said I was fine where I was, I'd find her later. She left. I stayed at the bar and ordered another drink. That's when he sat down next to me. His name was Marcus, or that's what he told me. Tall, well-dressed in a specific way that's easy to read as confident rather than calculated. He was good at conversation, asked questions that weren't the standard script, listened to the answers, knew when to be funny and when to be direct. I was aware that I was enjoying talking to him more than I'd expected to. I was also aware, in a separate part of my brain that I wasn't fully listening to, that something about the interaction was slightly off-tempo. Like a song where the rhythm is right but something in the chord progression doesn't resolve the way you expect. He offered to buy me a drink. I said sure. What I should tell you is that I watched him order it. He went to the far end of the bar to flag down the bartender, and I turned away for maybe 90 seconds to send a text to Dara telling her where I was. When the drink arrived in front of me, I picked it up without thinking. He smiled and said something about the night being better than expected, and I laughed and agreed and drank about a third of it before the thought arrived. I had not watched the drink being made. I had not watched it being carried to me. I had been looking at my phone. I put the glass down. He was talking about something. I was nodding, but I wasn't tracking the words anymore. I was going back through the last 20 minutes trying to feel whether anything in my body felt different. I didn't notice anything yet, but the thought had arrived, and once it arrived I couldn't make it leave. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. He said of course, and I made sure to move away before I took out my phone to call Dara. She answered after 2 rings. I told her where I was and what I was thinking. She said she was coming right then. "Don't drink anything else," she said. "Don't go anywhere with him." When I got back from the bathroom, he was still there, same relaxed posture, fresh drink in front of him. He asked if I was okay, and I said I was fine, just checking on a friend. We talked for a few more minutes. Normal conversation, no pressure, no indication that anything was wrong. Part of me started to think I was being paranoid. Another part of me noticed that he hadn't asked whether I'd finished my drink. Dara arrived about 10 minutes later, and she didn't come alone. She brought both her friends, which meant there were suddenly 3 people between me and the bar rather than just me. Marcus registered this shift. Something in his posture changed, not dramatically, but I caught it. He stayed a few more minutes and then said he had to find his friends and that it was great talking to me. He left. We waited until he was fully out of sight before Dara said anything. She said she'd seen him from across the room when she came in, and something about him had made her move faster than she'd planned. She said the 3 of them had positioned themselves specifically, not obviously, but between me and the exits. I looked at the drink on the bar. The third I'd already consumed. I thought about how far from our table Dara had said she was when I called, and how fast she'd moved, and whether she'd been 5 minutes later the calculation would have been different. We left together. I didn't feel sick that night, but I slept for 11 hours and woke up feeling wrong in a way that was hard to name, not ill, just hollowed out. I went to a clinic the following Monday. They couldn't test for most substances after 48 hours. The results were inconclusive. Inconclusive is the word that stays with me. Not clean. Not clear. Inconclusive. Marcus's name, if it was his name, appeared on nothing. The bar had cameras, but we hadn't filed anything in time to get the footage. He doesn't exist anywhere I've been able to look. What exists is that drink sitting on the bar, a third already gone, and Dara moving through a crowd faster than she needed to if nothing was wrong. I go out less now. When I do, I keep my drink in my hand. I don't put it down, I don't turn away from it, I don't accept what I haven't watched being made from the moment the bottle was opened. Dara says I've gotten paranoid, and she's probably right. But she also moved faster than she needed to that night. And neither of us talks about why. My name is Derek, and this happened 2 years ago in a city I'd recently moved to, when I was 29 and didn't know many people yet. I want to describe the context because it matters. I'd relocated for work, new city, new job, no existing social network. I was the kind of alone that isn't dramatic but is persistent, the low-level background noise of not having anyone to call on a Friday when the workday ends. I downloaded a dating app not with any particular urgency, but because it was something to do, a way of existing in a new city from a direction other than my apartment. I matched a woman named Claire 2 weeks in. Her profile was well constructed, 6 photos, a bio that was specific without being exhaustive, references to things she actually seemed to know about. The conversation that followed felt like talking to someone real. Not scripted, not mirrored, not performing. She pushed back on things I said. She had opinions. The kind of exchange that makes you think this might actually be something. We talked for 5 days before she suggested meeting. I'd been waiting for it. I'd gotten cautious enough by that point to let the other person suggest the move. She named a bar she liked in my neighborhood, which she said she knew from when she'd lived nearby. We picked a Thursday evening. I got there first and found a spot at the bar. She arrived 12 minutes late, texted to say she was running behind, which felt normal. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately from the photos. She was attractive and seemed confident, and the first 10 minutes were good. Easy. The kind of conversation that makes the week before it seem worth it. Then I noticed the man at the table near the door. He'd been there when I arrived, which is why he hadn't registered as unusual. But he was still there 40 minutes later with the same glass, barely touched. And he was watching our table. Not continuously, he was good about it, glancing down at his phone, looking toward the bar, but I work in an open-plan office and I have learned to feel the direction of attention in a room the way other people feel temperature. He was watching us. I didn't say anything to Claire. I filed it and kept talking. Started checking the room more carefully. Noticed a woman 2 tables over who had come in about 15 minutes after Claire and had positioned herself with a clear line of sight to us. She was with a man, but the man was doing most of the talking and she was looking elsewhere most of the time. 2 people in one bar watching the same table was possible coincidence. 3 things in sequence is a pattern. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. On the way back I walked past the man near the door and dropped my napkin next to his table, crouching to pick it up and staying down long enough to see the screen of his phone. He was quick but not quick enough. I caught the last seconds of a text thread before he turned the phone face down. I couldn't read the full message, but I saw my name. My first name in a thread that wasn't my contact in his phone. I went back to the table. Claire was on her phone and put it away when I sat down. I watched her face. Nothing obviously off. She asked if everything was okay and I said yeah, just slow at the bar. She smiled and moved back into the conversation. I thought through what I knew. A man near the door with my first name in a text thread on his phone. A woman across the room who hadn't looked at the person she came with in 20 minutes. Claire, who had been vetted in every way I knew how to vet someone, who felt real and had given me every reason to believe she was. I made a decision. I told her I had to leave. Said I'd just gotten a message from my building, water issue in my unit, I needed to get back. I watched her face when I said it. Something moved across it that she controlled quickly, not disappointment, not confusion. Something more specific than that. An adjustment. The face of someone recalculating. She said, of course, these things happen. Offered to walk out together. I said I needed to settle the tab first and she said she'd wait outside. I watched her go to the door and say something to the man as she passed him, brief and quiet. He stood up within 90 seconds and followed her out. I didn't leave through the front. I went to the bar, told the bartender I had reason to believe I was being followed and asked if there was a back exit. He took me seriously immediately, said something that told me this wasn't the first time someone had asked, and walked me through the kitchen to the alley. I got home by a route that added 15 minutes to the walk. I locked my door. I sat in my apartment and went through everything I knew about Claire's profile, every photo, every detail of the bio, the specific things she'd said in conversation. I ran the photos through a reverse image search. Nothing came back. The photos were not elsewhere online. Which meant either she was who she said she was, which made the man near the door and the woman across the room and the text with my name into a very elaborate coincidence. Or the photos were real and original, which meant she created the profile with her own images specifically for this purpose. Not stolen identity, manufactured identity. Made from scratch for me. I reported the profile. I changed my routine for 2 weeks, different routes to work, different coffee places, different times. Nothing happened. I didn't see any of them again. I deleted the app. I've thought about what the endpoint was. What would have happened if I'd walked out the front door with her? If I hadn't dropped the napkin? If I'd been less tuned to the direction of attention in a room? The app I'd been on had my workplace listed, my neighborhood, my photo, my first name. Whoever had been in that bar had enough to find me if they wanted to. Maybe they didn't want it after I walked out the back. Maybe the specific conditions they needed weren't present anymore and they moved on. Maybe I'm overestimating what any of it meant. But I don't have my workplace listed on any profile anymore. And I never leave a bar through the front door if I arrive through the front door and something felt wrong while I was inside. Some adjustments are small enough that you forget you made them. You just notice one day that you always do things a certain way now, and you have to think back to remember why. I remember why. 5 accounts. 5 different entry points. The same thing underneath all of them, someone on the other side of the screen who already knew what they were doing before you answered. If these stayed with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next ones are already waiting,